In this video, I'm going to be unboxing, taking a look, and doing some testing on this NexStar MX. This is a dual SATA HDD enclosure, USB 3.0 and eSATA. Gonna take a look here. And this also supports RAID, which is what I'm going to be testing, is actually the RAID performance, with storage capacity up to 6 terabytes. Here's a look at the side, then the back of the features. Got a 40mm exhaust fan, and then the other side with the specifications. Okay, so let's take a look at what's inside. Okay, so this appears to be an accessory pack. So we'll start off with this. Okay, so we have an eSATA cable. We have a USB cable, or excuse me, USB 3.0 cable. This appears to be a mount for it. We have a power connector, some screws to screw the hard drives in, got a user manual, and then what appears to be like a little quick installation guide. Okay, now get that out of the way, and okay, so here is the enclosure. It's protected by some pretty nice cardboard, and then a plastic bag over it as well. Okay, so this would be the front. We've got lights for power, and then the 2 hard drives. Then we've got ventilation around there. There's the side, nice all aluminum. And the back, there's our 40mm fan. We got an eSATA there, USB 3.0, power input, and then on off. Okay, so let's let me pop some of those screws off and take a look at the innards. Okay, so 4 little screws come off, and let's see how it looks like it. Oh, there it goes. It slides out like that. Okay, so there's a look at the inside. Nothing really going on in there. It's definitely all going on here. Okay, so here we go. Got the back plane there, so you just slide 2 hard drives in, screw them to the side, and there you go. Looks pretty simple. Their LEDs for the front are there. Yeah, so not a whole lot going on in here. So now I'll have to check out the dip switches and what that particular switch does as well too. Unless that switch is... No, I thought perhaps maybe that switch hit the side so it knew when it was open or closed, but anyway, let's might have to look at the manual here real quick and I'll find out what that does. Okay, so the little green button there is a reset button, and that is used in conjunction with these dip switches here for selecting the RAID mode, or the just a bunch of disk, or the independent disk. which the independent disk will allow this to operate as 2 drives, and obviously just a bunch of disks will be one big drive. RAID 1 will be a mirror, and RAID 0 will be striped. So then you use the reset button in conjunction with after you install the drives, and then select how you want them to be set up. Okay, so now I'm going to load it up and we'll do some testing. And for testing purposes, I'm going to be using a Samsung solid state drives, the 830 series, SATA 6 gigabit a second, and these are the 128 gigabyte, there we go, 128 gigabyte drives. So I'm going to pair these two together, and I'm actually going to do it in a stripe and see how much data we can push through the internal controller here. I think this would put the most stress on it, a couple of fast SSDs in RAID 0. So I'm going to give that a shot. I'll install it up and we'll see if this thing can handle the throughput of these drives. Okay, so got the 2 drives installed there. Get another look at it. And now, according to the manual, we set the RAID. So turning, come on, focus. Okay, turning the 2 switches to the on position. Then it says to power the unit up. So we'll plug that in. And it says to hold the reset button for 5 to 7 seconds is what it says. Kind of waiting for some kind of visual or something that I don't think I'm gonna get, so that seems like it was longer. So okay, now let's hook it up to the computer. Okay, so I opened the Windows Disk Management and hooked it all up, turned it on, and now we have an unknown disk of 238 gigabytes. So that will be the 2 SSDs in a RAID 0 there. So we'll initialize the disk, and we should be up online, new volume, just like normally creating, or when you add another disk. Next. And so we'll use, for the testing, I'll use SSD RAID 0 as the volume label. It's formatting, and we have a new drive. Cool. So now let's get on to some benchmark testing. Okay, so here's the part where it gets a little tricky. I've run the benchmarks a couple of different times with different scenarios here, and we'll go through them one by one. Okay, first of all, this top left-hand corner is a single Samsung drive running directly off the SATA 6 gigabit a second port on my motherboard. So you can see that we're getting pretty high numbers there. So that is right off the motherboard. Okay, and that's a single drive. And then I did a single drive in the dock, and that's what we get, single drive in the dock. So I'm gonna, and this is eSATA here. So I'm gonna guess, you know, my motherboard only supports eSATA at the 3 gigabits a second, so it would make sense to see these numbers decreased a little bit because of the bandwidth. So that would make sense to me to see this. So this, they're both the single drive, just different. We've got off the motherboard SATA, and we have eSATA here. So okay, now we come over here, and this is the dual drive, dual drives in a RAID 0, and this is USB. I ran the back panel USB here, and the front panel USB there. I don't know why the front panel USB connector on my motherboard is actually pretty, well, it's a lot higher. Not sure why the one on the right, which again is the front panel USB on my computer, is higher, but it is. And this is the RAID 0 configuration in the drive bay. So still a far cry even from the single drive on eSATA. Now come over here, and this is eSATA on the RAID 0 configuration. So still half as much as the 6 gigabit a second off the motherboard, but that would make sense because eSATA is only running at 3 gigabits a second bandwidth on my board. Okay, so we definitely see that the device is performing considerably better in eSATA than USB 3.0. Okay, so we've got that. So definitely this device, use eSATA if you have it. USB 3.0 just isn't quite there. You know, right off the bat we are about 50 megabits a sec, or excuse me, 50 megabytes a second slower on sequential, and about 40, not quite 40, in the 512K. Yeah, and then so you see that, yeah, it's huge, pretty big difference even on the right side of it. So definitely use that device, this NexStar MX from Vantec. Use that in eSATA mode if you can. So now let me bring over, this is where I got real interesting. Okay, so, well, it's interesting for me anyway. So the one on the left again is the eSATA 1 drive. The one on the right is the eSATA dual drive. Not a huge difference throughout the whole thing having the RAID 0 on these SSDs. But there is, you know, there is a bit of a difference, especially in that 512K. Well, I guess in the 4Ks as well too, there's a pretty big difference. But sequential reads, so I think what we're doing here is the sequential reads, we're just basically maxing out the eSATA connection. And as you go down, the difference is more substantial, because then all of a sudden it ends up being the controller inside of the unit making up the difference there. So anyway, those are the numbers that I got. Still a far cry from the motherboard port, but I mean, that's come to be expected from an external solution, I think. We're just hitting the bandwidth cap on the eSATA, unfortunately. Other than that, if there was a higher bandwidth on the eSATA, I think we could have seen some pretty good numbers out of it, but we're hitting the cap, so it's done. I mean, there's just not much of a difference in between a single and then a striped on SSDs. I mean, I would have expected to see you know, more in the 800 megabits a second if we weren't bandwidth capped here. So anyway, that wraps this up. Now let's go back for a final look. Okay, so wrapping up on this Vantec NexStar Enclosure. You know, like I said, I think it's pretty cool. Personally, what I would do is I would ignore the RAID 0 configuration. You know, even in spindle hard drives, you know, RAID 0 would perform a lot faster than RAID 1 in this particular unit, but I think where the goal of this, or the key thing that I would think with this, would be RAID 1ing a couple of hard drives to do a backup, and then having a redundant backup of anything on your PC. So doing this, you would basically have your original on your PC, and then with a RAID 1 in here, you'd have 2 copies. So this would give you triple data redundancy, and I think that would make the most sense, in my opinion, would be to follow that plan and do that. However, if you were looking for some fast hard drive or fast data access, you could certainly use 2 hard drives in there on RAID 0, but I think, you know, you can definitely see the performance would be better with 1 external SSD than would be 2 external hard drives. if you were looking for fast data access. But other than that, that kind of wraps up my review of this. I do like the product, and I think it would be great for, in a RAID 1 backup situation. Other than that, you're just hitting the bandwidth limitation on eSATA and USB 3.0. So that'll wrap it up, and as always, thank you for watching.